Welcome back. The continuing investigation of Tokyo Governor Masuzoe's use of political funds for personal use has reached something of a crescendo. Michael, he was on the hot seat all day yesterday at the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly. You watched that? You think he's got legs?
I'm afraid that it looks like that we're nearing the end.
It does.
It looks really bad for him. He had to endure hours and hours of people telling everyone, and there were members of the public there, and of course the cameras, what a terrible human being he is. Mm-hmm. Now, his crimes, so to speak, are not crimes. They're not prosecutable. He had, over this time period, lawyers. He hired two very prominent investigative lawyers to look into his charges that he put on the accounts of his political funds for things that you would normally pay for out of your own pocket. And they came out of that with a very interesting phrase. Not illegal, but inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Inappropriate was something we were discussing, and we've been discussing since this scandal broke. Did he break any laws? No. Is what he did stupid? Yes. It has been devastating in terms of his personal popularity, and now he's facing the questioning of the Metropolitan Assembly. Now, the Metropolitan Assembly can censure him and condemn him and say that they have no confidence in him. If they do so, we might even have, God forbid, an election for governor at the same time that we have the House of Councilors election. And wow, is that a can of worms?
The political ramifications of this one, we've discussed that before, and I predicted that it's just going to be a horrible brouhaha. You thought that perhaps they would hold back on it, and to your credit, it seemed like some people in the LDP were also saying, it's not illegal. What he did was maybe not proper, but it's okay. He's okay. We don't want to go through another election. Let's hold off on that. It seems like that tide has actually turned, though, over the last couple of days. In particular, yesterday, I think the performance was pretty revealing. I mean, they blew up to a huge size, the receipts that he used for hotels, for wining and dining, that sort of thing.
And that when they did that, but they do that all the time in these kinds of situations, they do want to make a point so that the cameras can see them. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, there still is a great deal of reticence in the ruling coalition on pushing Masuzoe out. Right. The first thing is that he is their choice. He was the one that they chose to support in the last governor's election. It was not
they held their nose.
It was a grudging choice. Right. They did not want to, but they couldn't field their own candidate. Mm-hmm. And they coalesced around Masuzoe, who had his problems.
Well, he's been all right for a few months. Usually this kind of thing, you can sweep it under the rug. Nobody's really investigating too much.
And none of it's illegal. Mm-hmm. Okay, so why is it a problem? It's unfortunately, the political funds are not funds that he himself collected, for example, from donors. We had just this past week, Amari Akira, mm-hmm. who was forced out for improperly accepting donations from his cabinet post. And the prosecutors looked through it and they found, well, yes, he got cash. He put it directly into his pocket, but he didn't do anything for the donor. There was no bribery because there was no tit for tat. It was cash for no favors, no scandal. Mm-hmm. You can get away with that, okay?
Right. And also, he's not a generally disliked individual.
Yeah. So if it's not illegal, it should be okay. But in this case, the money was not from donors. It was money that came to him because he was the head of a party, mm-hmm. and the parties receive cash from the government, i.e., from the taxpayer, in order to do political activities. And when you start putting on your receipts as political activities, stays at high-class hotels, which is basically you and your family staying at the hotel over New Year's, if you start putting French restaurants or tempura restaurants in your neighborhood, mm-hmm. and you put that down as political action when it was just you and your family plus one, let's say, person from the neighborhood, you're pushing it, right? And you're pushing it way past where anyone would prudently go. And he has, unfortunately, said, I'm willing to pay the money back. Well, it means that he knows that he's blown it, right? Of course, it shows contrition, which is very important in Japanese society. We always have, when something goes wrong, the press conference, and they solemnly say, we are so very sorry, and they get up and bow, or sometimes they even get on their knees in front of the table and make their very public act of contrition. But sorry, the range of things that he would put on these public accounts, the money was no longer, okay, it's not like he's a bureaucrat that's using a bank account for the government. The money was given to his party, and what he did with it was his party's business. Well, he left the party, and he took the cash with him, and then put it down as political activities, things like buying art on the internet.
When did he leave the party? He left the LDP.
Yeah, but
before
then he had the New Renaissance Party,
right?
And that party got money, and just as he was leaving, he emptied all of its accounts, and then left the party. And he's not the first to do that. Lots of those who have fled parties have emptied the accounts. The fight over the accounts was what caused the big brouhaha inside the JIP, the Japan Innovation Party, where they had the rump, the non-Hashimoto group, had control of the Incan that controlled the bank account. Right. And
that was in Tokyo, and the people in Osaka were saying...
The people in Osaka were losing their minds, thinking that that this bunch of crooks had walked away with the party's money. This is very common. Okay? Again, just because other people do it, and everybody who's in the Diet, one of the reasons why they're so reticent to really push hard in the LDP is because all of them do this. Maybe not to the extent that Masuzoe did, but everybody has shady uses of public funds for personal gain.
Well, the real danger with this particular scandal, when it first broke, I was kind of supporting the governor because, of course, he's going to travel in luxury. He's going to travel first class. He's going to be at the penthouse. He represents the city, the metropolis of Tokyo.
And the metropolis of Tokyo both can afford it and should put on a good show.
Right. So wherever he goes, he's representing all of us. But it went 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, other receipts were coming out. The pajamas came out last week, and this week, he's thrown into the receipts dinner parties that he had, even before he became governor. So it's looking really, really kind of slimy for him.
The problem is that the Abe administration absolutely does not want anything to interfere with the House of Councilors election. And this is really
very delicate,
dicey.
Isn't it? Yes, it is.
Because if he does not, this is becoming really dicey. Because if he does not survive, there has to be a by-election selecting his successor.
The time is so tight, isn't it? I mean, the elections for the upper house, half of the upper house, will be on the 22nd.
It's less than a month away, and suddenly we have this crisis where the choice of the LDP and the Komeito is not viable, but there's no one that can tell him to go.
That's right. That's another difference in the complexity here, that with Inose, less than 2 years ago, he was actually asked by a fatherly figure.
Yeah, the person who had anointed him and put him in there, which was the immediate former governor, Ishihara Shintaro. He could go to Inose and say, it's over.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you didn't break any laws. Yes, everyone understands that.
Take a knee.
But you got to go.
Right. And he did.
Masuzoe is an independent actor and is famously abrasive.
He sure is.
And famously stubborn. And, he looked beat yesterday after the hours and hours of going up to the microphone and saying, I understand that this is not a good thing to do. It's not illegal. I'm reflecting, seriously thinking of this crazy idea that he has that somehow selling his second home will redeem him or in some way. Again,
he's just pulling things out of the hat.
Right. When that's happening, right in that space of the Metropolitan Assembly. Once that's over, and they're not going to keep doing it.
Right.
Once that period of time ends, he is really committed to defending not the rightness of what he did, but the fact that it was not illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And that he shouldn't be forced out. And there's an argument there. Should two of the governors of what is essentially the world's wealthiest city be forced out in such a short amount of time while in office? What kind of precedent does that set? And he can argue that. He says, I realize I am not the perfect person, but we can't have the city constantly going through governor after governor. He can make that point.
Sure. I think that the machinery of state, the Tokyo metropolitan government, is going to eventually be so jammed up that they're not really going to be able to be effective, and he will have to step down.
So we're looking at the twilight right now.
Right. But that window of opportunity, if that doesn't happen within the next week or so, now we're into the upper house election. It really must not happen during that period, because all of the focus needs to be on the upper house election.
And they're already, immediately after the Diet was closed on June the 1st, the politicking started. The speeches started. People started going all out into the hinterlands. The members of the Diet, they're not, they're out in their districts right now, pushing hard. And now there's this crisis in Tokyo that is not being handled, that is not going to get better, and it's just a mess.
Masuzoe, the Tokyo governor, is really having a hard time. The opposition camp is loaded for bear. He might have to resign in the next couple of days. Let's see if somebody leaves him out in the woods.